So, I think it's fair to share that I was diagnosed with dyslexia as a very young boy. Actually, I was in the first grade. And at the time I was diagnosed, unfortunately, they didn't have sort of the tools and systems and capabilities that they have today. So my parents reluctantly said to me, David, you're going to have to work harder and focus more. And that was sort of the remedy I received at that point in my life. And I did exactly that. I worked harder and focused more. And for someone with dyslexia, it actually is helpful to do those things, but it certainly doesn't make it any easier, nor do the environment or the conditions really help support me in the way I needed and wanted. And ironically, what happened was I started this journey on trying to better understand, how and why I was different from other people. What was making it so challenging for me to be able to write well and read with understanding. And so, despite the dyslexia, I persevered and worked through many challenging and difficult circumstances, particularly in the academic world, but also in the professional world. And so I think what brought me to Texthelp was the sort of synergy of the fact that Texthelp creates technology that specifically supports neurodiverse people with neurodiverse conditions and people with a second language. So it was sort of like the clouds parting and the sun shining through when I found Texthelp. It was actually incredible. And if you know anything about Texthelp, you know that we have served over 200 million people and currently serving over 20 million with our technology. We make a huge difference in people's lives. And had I had this technology when I was a young boy, it would have made a massive difference. It makes a massive difference today in my regular use of the technology. So I'm not only excited and privileged to work with a company like Texthelp, but feel gratified that we're making such a difference in the world. We know, and research supports the fact that 15 to 20% of the adult population has some type of neurodiverse condition, dyslexia being one of the more prominent ones. So we also know that, as you just suggested, many adults either don't know or are uncomfortable sharing the fact. I actually talked to a father a few days ago. We were at a conference, and his son was diagnosed with dyslexia at an early age. He's now in university and entering the workforce. And he was telling me that his son feels terribly uncomfortable sharing his condition. So while he had support and assistance in his earlier years, that's no longer, at least no longer easily available to him. And so the father was sort of trying to figure out how to help his son develop the courage and confidence necessary to sort of, be comfortable, sharing that kind of information.
Even in this generation, people are beginning to get into the workplace and still feel uncomfortable because they're not necessarily provided for as they should be. So I think, it's also easy to take for granted that now that we're in an era of digital communications, that surely that should be easily provided for. And it is, a simple fix, isn't it? The tools that Texthelp have are easily installable and usable. So it's strange that that barrier still pervades at the moment.
That's a great point. One of the things I love about our technology is, as you just suggested, it's easily available. I would almost categorize it as ubiquitous. It sits right on your desktop or your laptop or your mobile phone. So it's not something you have to necessarily search for or look for. It's always there, and it's easily what's the word? Configurable. It's actually something that you don't have to necessarily figure out in some kind of dark corner of an application trying to figure out how to adjust it so that it matches or meets your needs. And so things like using screen masking or the speech to text and text to speech functions are very easy. And what we've found is that users of the technology say exactly that. There's such an ease of use and a comfort with it. And it's also something that's so lightweight and so easy to install that it's not necessarily something that spends hours trying to figure out or set up. So it makes it not only easier, but it makes it effective. One of the biggest products in the workplace that is available is a product called Read and Write. And essentially, our legacy started in the K through 12 space. So a lot of the sort of early days, and Texthelp has been around since 1996, so almost 30 years of use and creativity associated with the product. But it's primarily a tool that helps or assists with a number of different tasks and activities. I already mentioned speech to text and text to speech. I mentioned screen masking. It also has an incredibly powerful word prediction tool embedded in it. It also does things like highlighting. So if you looked at the tool, we sort of categorize it into various areas. So as I mentioned, speech to text, there's what we call the neurodiverse settings, and then there's the productivity settings. So it's a very, very robust tool that does a variety of different things, that supports a variety of different functions and activities. I'd say the other sort of product that's pretty well known is what's called ReachDeck. And ReachDeck is actually a web tool that helps to makes our web applications accessible. So those are the two primary products that are typically used in the workplace. But the other interesting thing, and one of the things we talked about, was this idea that it's not only important that we provide this kind of assistance support, but that we celebrate the fact that people with these neurodiverse conditions have incredible capabilities that are untapped. For example, I'm, despite the fact that I struggle to read and write, I'm incredibly good at pattern recognition. And some people with dyslexia are good at verbal pattern recognition, but others are also good with math and number recognition. So I think the opportunity is not only to support individuals with neurodiverse conditions, but to celebrate and enhance the opportunity for what they can contribute to their organizations. When you're seeking to support somebody and help is not to try to fix them, but to serve them. And so leaders in these companies have an opportunity to really serve a population who's very interested and very excited about contributing. Our contributions may not look exactly the same, but they are nonetheless powerful and relevant, and in the end will produce benefits that many of these companies have yet to fully realize. I think there's just an enormous opportunity here, and it doesn't really require what I would call a heavy lift. It's actually fairly straightforward and seamless. And so I think with a little bit of a mind shift and a little bit of an openness to the possibilities, I think enormous potential is there waiting for them to receive. Employers are likely, or if they haven't already, start to experience a wave of individuals whose priorities are well-being. COVID certainly accelerated that and enhanced that, but I think also this what they consider to be the Gen Z population is much more focused on well-being than, say, maybe previous generations. And so what you're seeing is a lot of individuals seeking these kinds of assistance or this kind of support or these kinds of capabilities that they may have had as in K through 12 or in university. I'd say the other sort of category is this idea that, as I talked about earlier, performance. One thing we know for sure is certain professional areas, say, for example, cybersecurity, is an area where people with, for example, autism or dyslexia shine because of those sort of superpowers that we talked about earlier. I think the other area that organizations sometimes sort of struggle with is sort of the time and investment that's necessary to see benefits from these kinds of things. But ironically, it's sort of putting the cart before the horse. Instead of in making the investments and trusting and believing that these things will produce lots of benefit, they sort of are slow to act in some ways, despite the fact that there is plenty of evidence and plenty of support that technologies such as ours and others make a real difference in supporting their employees.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that's so empowering for everybody at every level of an organization, isn't it? It's not that you're just helping the people at the top or the bottom, it's literally everyone with this technology that can be assisted.
Absolutely. It is amazing because once they're accessing those kinds of things, there's no need to say raise their hand or to make any sort of strong statement about whether the fact that they believe this is necessary or not. It's just available to them. So I'm obviously actively involved in the community and our ERGs that support the development of a variety of different differences across the population. Every employee at Texthelp is required to go through a certain amount of diversity training. We have very robust engagement involvement across our ERGs, and Texthelp, because of the mission we have, our objective is to serve over 1 billion people by the end of this decade, which is obviously very, very critical. I'd say the other thing that we do is when we work with enterprises, we offer them the option to use our technology for free for their members of their family. So what we're finding, as you wouldn't be surprised, neurodivergent conditions are usually inherited. Struggling with the word hereditary, but it's inherited. And so what that means is often parents with children often have similar conditions. And so we offer our technology for enterprises who buy the technology free for families. And so we're very proud and happy about the number of parents who offer our technology to their children.